I was asking the Lord if I should sing the song or not, and then the first words of Mark's prayer were the first 4 words of the song. So, just a second here. I'll come. Not necessary. Thank you. This song is called Since Before the World Began. And when you hear my story, you'll know why I wrote this song. Since before the world began, since before the world began, well, I knew you, and I chose you to be mine. Since before the world began, since before the world began, well, I knew you, and I chose you to be mine. I knew the way you'd walk and the way you'd cry. I knew your walk, your talk, and the color of your eyes. I chose the way you'd walk and the way you'd cry. I knew your walk, your talk, and the color of your eyes. And I loved you when I formed you. I loved you when I made you. I knew the lies that you would tell, and I knew the things you'd do when life wasn't going well. I knew the lies that you would tell, and I knew the things you'd do when life wasn't going well. But I loved you, so I waited. I love you, so I'm waiting. 'Cause nothing can separate you from the love of God. There is no fear in perfect love. 'Cause nothing can separate you from the love of God. There is no fear in perfect love, since before the world began. All right, am I sitting in the right spot? Okay. So good morning, and thank you for having me today. It's a privilege to be around the Danlick family, I'm just saying. Mark told you that I was a counselor. Joya works for us in Kelowna. So she always calls me and says, I'm at work, what are you doing? And I'm down here playing around. So I wanted to talk a little bit about uncertainty today and the name of the Lord. I would say that probably 8 out of 10 people that I see in counseling this year have been for anxiety. Before that, I would have said depression, but this year for sure, during COVID, it's been anxiety. And trying to help people walk through some of that if they don't believe is tricky. because it's all based on whether they can positive think it away. So I'm grateful that a long time ago someone told me that every need you'll ever have will be met by a greater knowledge of who God is. I'm going to say that again. Every need you will ever have will be met by a greater knowledge of who He is. And so today I'm going to tell you my story, and I'm going to tell you the different facets of God that have helped me through it. So, yeah. In biblical times, your name was given to you so that your character would line up with it. And so when we talk about people's ordained names and the names of God, it was supposed to be to define their character. My name today is Barb Gladue, but that wasn't my real name. And I'm going to tell you that after, but I can't tell you what the name of names means to me. It's a big deal. So perhaps you'll learn a little bit more about God's character today. And maybe another part of Him, you'll be able to cry out to Him in any uncertainty that you have. Even with the fires here, over at the RV park where I am, there's quite the talk. People are freaking out pretty big over there with the uncertainty of the fires and how that's all going too. So anyway, I grew up in Calgary. I was born severely prematurely, and so I was sick right at birth. I weighed 2.5 pounds, and I was in the hospital about 3.5 years. Maybe closer to 4. So I was adopted, and my adopted mom is a very sweet little British lady that doesn't get too excited over anything, but she didn't ever use the word adopted. She said it was chosen. They were screened by social services, and she'd have to go down to the hospital, and she had to pick which baby she wanted. And so she said that all the nurses said, "Don't pick her, because she's the ugliest, sickest, homeliest baby ever." And my mom said, "Well, that's the one. That's the one I want." And they used a word back then. They called it mongoloid, which would have been some form of the mental disability that they were sure that I had. So they were absolutely, "Don't pick her." Anyway, my mom's such a sweetie. She's picked me anyway. But it was always called chosen. It was never called adopted. I had another sister also that was adopted that was older than me. We weren't related, but now we are. And then when they called my mom to pick me up from the hospital, my mom said, "Well, I can't, I'm going in to have a baby." And at that point, she was full to term with the baby because she was told she couldn't have kids, and that's how that happened. So my dad went to the hospital with my older sister who thought she was getting a baby, and I walked out because I was like 3.5 or 4 years old, and Carol was completely confused because where's the baby? Well, there's the baby. That's not really the baby. She's coming later. Anyway, so we went and stayed with an aunt for a week. I bonded totally to Carol. Carol became my mom, basically, not my sister, and my mom was too busy with the newborn. As an adult, you can figure that out, but as a kid, it was a little bit, well, I had nothing to figure it out with. I was just doctors, nurses, and then my sister. So my mom was a sweetheart. She really was. She had the biggest heart ever. My father was the most angriest, abusive man you could ever met. Friends would say he was evil. He was very evil, and in every way abusive. So physically, sexually, emotionally, spiritually, everything. My sister Carol ran away when she was 10 and never came back. That's how bad it was at our house. So I was actually quite glad for her that she got away, but then I was like, but who's going to take care of me? Anyway, Carol left in the middle of the night, and I had gone running down into her room, and Dad heard me get up. And so he saw that I had opened her door, and why would I do that in the middle of the night? He said, "Where is she?" And I said, "I just had a bad dream. I had a bad dream that something happened." And I had to pay for that. Carol never did come home. I met Carol again when I was 40. So it was grand to find her. But she ran and she hid. because that's how crazy my dad was. At the age of 5, Carol used to take piano lessons, and they couldn't afford for all of us to have piano lessons, so I'd sit next to her and she practiced, and she'd do this and then turn the page, and I had no idea what she was doing, but when she got off the piano, I would sit there and go, dee dee dee, turn the page, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then about 2 years later, they could afford for me to have piano lessons too, and my teacher found out in short order that I had no idea what I was doing. Like, it was all by ear, I had no clue. And so he said, you'll never ever play again a song that Carol's played, because I can't trust you. But I ate, drank, and slept music. It was everything. It was my solace. I would write, I think the first music I wrote was when I was 4. Still remember a little, we had this funny thing at Christmas. Mom and Dad used to set out, each of us had a chair with all our presents on it, with our names on it. And I had no idea. I didn't find out till I was like probably 50 that my sisters would get up in the middle of the night and they would switch the toys. I had no idea. But anyway, in the switching, Carol was supposed to have a little piano, and she put it on my chair. I thought, I won the lottery. This piano was so cool, and I wrote my first song on that little piano. It was all colored. So my plan of attack was that I would study music. I traveled all over the world playing music. I got to play with some really funky people, and so I played with John Denver, and I played with Steve Miller and Tommy Banks. I had a chance to play with a lot of fun people, and as long as I didn't sing, I was good. I'll play for anybody, but I never really wanted to sing. But anyway, that happened. I was recognized all across Canada for piano competitions, and my self-worth and my self-esteem was totally wrapped up in my music. I started at the University of Calgary to study the Bachelor of Music. I'd play 8 hours a day. I would teach 4 hours a day, and I was at school the rest. I just ate, drank, slept music. When I was 15, a good friend of mine led me to the Lord. At the very same time, my dad was studying to be a pastor. And I actually got saved at the same denomination of church that my dad became an ordained minister. But he would get up to the pulpit and he would preach, and then he would come home and do whatever he wanted to me. And then he'd preach, and I couldn't reconcile it in my head. I was like, Lord, I don't understand what that means. Like, is he a Christian? Or anyway, so when I became a Christian, I came home from the retreat, and I thought, well, I might as well put my foot in my mouth. I needed to figure it out. So I said, well, Mom, are you a Christian? And she's like, are you kidding me? I'm the president of the Women's Guild, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh. And I said, well, what about Dad? Wow. He said, what are you talking about? I'm a minister. I said, that's not what I asked. And at that point, I got thrown across the room. So I do remember that's the only time my little sister said, well, if you're a Christian, I never want to be one. That's what she said to my dad, which I was like mortified. But anyway, she got away with saying that kind of stuff. So I started at the Bachelor of Music, and I was studying to be a concert pianist. I was going to teach music. Yeah, music was going to be my life. And probably the second year in, I developed this thing on my hands, and the doctor said that I had to stop playing. Well, I felt like kind of an Olympic athlete or somebody that's like trained their whole life for a something, and then they say, I don't know what to tell you, but you can't do it anymore. And I actually was thinking, who is this God that he can do this? I remember thinking that. And God said to me that night in my prayer time, if I'm not Lord of all, I'm not Lord at all. And I knew that day that music had become my God. When I was sad, I'd go to music. When I was excited, I'd go to music. If I wanted to impress somebody, I'd go to music. It was all about that. And even though I was faithful in my prayer time, he wasn't Lord of all. He was Lord of some. So he took my music away. I don't really know how to describe the day that he did that, but it was a pretty sad day for me. And I was lost. I had no idea. My whole life had been this, and now what? They let me finish the year out at the university. And during that time, I had moved out of home. I've been trying to move out since I was little. But I had this friend at my youth group, and he'd say, you just need to stay there and keep praying for your dad. And I'm like, yeah, but why do I have to stay there? I can pray for him. I'm across the room, right? And I moved out on a Saturday. And Saturday and Sunday, I hadn't practiced that whole weekend, which it wouldn't have been like that. I would have been on the piano 8 hours both those days. And I went into my music lesson on Monday morning. And the professor was standing behind me, and he said, play this. And our songs are like 15 or 20 pages long. So I played the song, and then he'd say, play the next song. And I played the song, and then he said, he's behind me. There's silence. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to kick me out of school. Because it was the first time I had never practiced. I was scared to death of what he was going to say, and it was completely silence behind me. And then he said, I don't know what you did, but you should have done it years ago. I moved out of my home 2 days. I can't imagine what would have happened if I'd have lived in a Daniluk family or any other family, actually. I can't imagine. I sometimes grieve the fact that God never got a fair shake there in my music, but anyway. Yeah. So a year later, I ended up in a music therapy program in Vancouver. I had no idea what it meant, but it had the word music in it, and I thought if I could get away with doing some form of music, I would still kind of hang in there. And I worked with a lot of seniors and people with disabilities, and I did a lot of palliative care where I got to play and sing as people died. It was very, very powerful. That's when I took up the guitar. So when I met Steve Miller, very embarrassing, someone told him that I was a musician. Well, I am on the piano. At the guitar, I was just learning, C chord, G chord. I didn't know. I think I knew 3 chords when I met him. And someone told him that I was a musician. So he said, well, meet me at the dining hall tonight. We'll all jam. All jam. That sounds so embarrassing. I knew 3 chords. But he wrote Fly Like an Eagle with us. He was the first guy to take me fishing on his big yacht, and I caught a big salmon, and I was pretty impressed with myself. But okay, so at the music therapy program, so that was my probably 3rd year university, I met Jehovah Ra, who is the Lord as my shepherd. The very first day I moved to Vancouver, I was robbed, and they took my first month's rent, my damage deposit, and my whole term, school music, for the music therapy program. They took all that money. And I was like, Lord, why is that necessary? I just couldn't understand. But he had a plan, and within a week of losing all that money, every penny was brought back to me. In the same amount. I got a check for something I thought I volunteered at the University of Calgary, and they sent me a check for the exact same amount that was stolen off of me. Within 6 months of moving into Vancouver, I was in a head-on collision. This little old lady hit me in my little car, and she had a huge cougar, and I was in intensive care for a long time. I'm like, welcome to Vancouver. And Lord, what is the plan? I couldn't really take it all in. And I was such a baby Christian that I was desperately trying to hold on to God and not be ticked off at him, because I was a little ticked off. So that's where I met Jehovah Jireh, my provider. The Lord provided my finances. He provided support for me in a new city. I didn't know a soul. And he provided a safer place for me to live, all within that first 6 months. I had to have eye surgery because I had had such a bad concussion. And that was all taken care of. It was just amazing how the Lord did that for me. My Christian friends I was married at 20. I married a man that was 14 years older than me. I'm pretty sure now. I had daddy issues. And we had 2 children, and then we adopted another young lad from India. When I was 31, I had my first stroke. And it was on my daughter's 8th birthday. I was sitting there playing for her and reading a story, and I don't remember. I woke up in the hospital and wondered where my kids were. They have no idea why I had it. So I was like, what? And 30 days later, I had another one. This time my husband was at home with me. So at least he could see and help and do the thing. So for 30 days, they put me in the hospital in Victoria, and they did every test known to man, every test. And they kept saying, you need to talk to your mom and find out if there's any genetic information that they know, because we have to find out if your kids have what you have, which we don't even know what that is, but we need to find out. And I phoned my mom, and she said, oh, no, we have never had any information. And I said, are you sure? Because the doctors are pretty serious about it. I really need to have that. And she said, I don't have anything. So my Christian friends circled around our family, that all your promises are yeses and amen. Andrew came and he sang it over me and Victoria. And we just hung on to those words, because I had no idea. I couldn't even be left alone with my kids. They took away my driver's license. And I was like, that's it. I'm not losing anything else. And again, I was reminded, every need you will ever have will be met by a greater knowledge of who he is. And I'm like, well, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? Because I can't hear you. And the doctor, after the first stroke, had said to me, you have to stop working, Barb. Because if you don't work, your body's going to shut down. And I'm like, yeah, but if I don't work, we don't eat. Because my husband never worked. He went hunting and fishing, and I don't even actually know, for months at a time. So I was a single mom taking care of our kids, basically. And when the doctor said, you have to stop working, I went, no, that's not how it works, because I need to provide for my kids. You have to stop. No. 30 days later, another stroke. No. How can I stop? I have to provide. I have to provide. That's what my belief was. And then my girlfriend, she came in and she says, the Lord told me what it is. And I said, oh, that's grand. What is it? So she read this to me. Oh, my beloved, you do not need to make your path like a snowplow. For I say to you, I go before you, and I'll engineer circumstances on your behalf. I am your husband, and I will protect thee and care for you and make full provision for you. I know your need, and I am concerned for you, for your peace, for your health, for your strength. But I cannot use a tired body. And you need to take time to renew your energies, both spiritually and physically, because I am the God of the battle, not you. I'm the one that said that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And Jesus said, come apart and be and at rest a while. And I will teach you, even as I taught Moses on the backside of the desert, and as I taught Paul in Arabia, so I will teach you. It's kind of a constructive period, and it's not in any sense a waste of time. And then at the end it says, I need you to be very serious in this. I am not speaking to you lightly. I was never more in earnest in any messages I've ever brought to you. Do not fail me. I have brought you this message at various times in the past, but it's never been more urgent than now. And I'm like, yeah. So I took a week off, and then I went back to work, because I really felt like I needed to provide. I don't think I ever got that God was going to provide for me. The next 7 years, my husband and I and our family, we were missionaries. We went down with YWAM for 2 years, and then we worked with Shannyman for 5. And in that whole time, God provided everything. I remember being in the mountains, at the Sierra Madre Mountains, with my daughter who had pneumonia at the time. We were working in some orphanage on the top of this mountain and trying to tell somebody in Spanish that I need medicine. And we took this, like a Western carriage, like the old days with the horse-drawn thing. We took that down to 6 hours, down this mountain path to the next village so that we could get some medicine. And I had $3.72. And the whole way there, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to have to do to get medicine. This is all I have. And I have no concept in Mexico. And the pharmacist, he spoke English. And I said, I have no idea how much medicine is. My daughter's so sick, you have to, I don't care if I have to clean your house, or I don't know what I have to do, but I've got $3.72. And he gave me medicine for Kita. And I was pretty sick at the time too, and he gave me medicine. And he didn't want any of our money. And I know that God that day provided for us. Jehovah Jireh showed us. We had no money, none, zero. We went away for 18 months with YWAM and Habitat for Humanity, and we had not a penny. And I'm here to tell you, every day we ate, every day we had a place to stay. And we learned some crazy things about God that we never would have unless we had did that. There was a fellow that taught in our first day in YWAM, and he's the one that would say, every need that you'll ever have will be met by a greater knowledge of who God is. And he said he had prayed that he would live on the edge so that people would know that it was God that did things for him and not just him that had orchestrated things. He told me a story about how he'd gone to the airport. The Lord told him that he was supposed to go as a missionary. I think it was Russia. And he had 4 kids. And he said, I was supposed to go to the airport on this day. He went that day. He had no money. He had no tickets. And when he got in line for the Russian flight, somebody came over with the 4 tickets and some money to take care of his kids for a month. And then he said that it was him and his wife's 25th anniversary, and he was flying back from India. And he was asking the Lord if there was any way he could provide something special for his wife for the 25th anniversary. And he sat down next to this lady. Well, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a pastor. What do you do? Well, I'm a jeweler. And she opens up this bag and unrolls this thing with diamonds and rings. And she said, I think you need to pick one of these for your wife. And I remember thinking, Lord, that's how I need to live. Because I want to know that it's you that's orchestrating things and not me. Well, as you'll see over the next 10 years, my health got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I had no choice at all but to rely on the name of the Lord. After the second stroke, I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't speak, and it was horrible. I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't be alone with my kids. So my friends gathered around me, and again, they called upon my shepherd, Jehovah Ra, and Jehovah Rapha to come and heal me. I kept asking my mom, tell me what the medical history is. The doctors need to know. It could change my life. Don't know it. The doctors were frantic to figure it out because I kept having strokes. I had another one not too long after. So where is God in uncertainty? He's right there when you call upon him. But you got to call upon him. In 2015, I was working in Nunavut for the Ministry of Social Services. And we were pulling kids out of homes that weren't safe. You see, I am a counselor, and if you didn't know that, you wouldn't ask me to help you as a counselor. You would know me as a mom and maybe as a friend. So you would come to me and ask me as a mom or a friend to help you. But if you knew I was a counselor, I might have authority in areas that you don't have to help you. And I think that's why God wants us to get to know his names. Because if we call on him just as a mom or just as a friend, we might not ask for the details that we're going to ask if we know he knows all or he is the healer. then we can go to him specifically for those things. Yeah, I was medevaced out of Nunavut after 10 months of living there. I had a bowel obstruction, and 2 surgeons up there determined that I need to have surgery right away. And I said, no, I'm a biker, pedal biker, and I'm not having that kind of surgery. So I declined their nice offer and I asked to fly home to Kelowna. And when I got here, I was put on a waiting list for surgery. And because I waited, the cost on my body was worse. After 6 months, they had to do one final x-ray before the surgery, and they did an x-ray, and then the surgeon called me and he says, we have to postpone your surgery because we found a massive tumor in your lung. I said, wait. I'm like, I'm just trying to wrap my thoughts around the surgery. What is this? And so the next day they did a biopsy on my lung and collapsed the lung. So that was a whole other thing. But it just was going on and on and on. And over the last 4 years, I've had 13 major surgeries. I've had my bowel removed. I have 10 inches left of my small intestine, so I don't absorb any nutrients at all from eating. I'm on 13 hours of IV every day. And I'm grateful because those IVs cost $2,300 a day and I don't pay for anything. I've been in intensive care in the last couple of years, I don't even know how many times. And just in May, I was in there for 6 weeks again because I had an allergic reaction. I can't have medication. That's one of the problems too. And I had a central line infection, and so they gave me antibiotics, and they didn't know at the time that I was allergic to them. And so I had a major anaphylactic response to it. You wouldn't even have recognized me if you'd have seen me in the hospital. And my girlfriend, who is my power of attorney, we were Skyping because of COVID, no one could come and visit. And she said, shall I call your kids to come and say goodbye? Because I was that sick. And I remember having the conversation in the hospital, okay, Lord, is this where, like, who gets to decide? Do I get to decide that I'm done, or do you get to decide, or how does that go exactly? Because I didn't know, and I'm like waiting in the hospital to die. And this is only a month and a half ago. And I didn't ever get the answer to that, but I did say, I think it would be cool if you could wait just a bit because my son is moving here in 2 days, so it'd be grand if we could just wait on that, because he would really be ticked off at you if I died today and he moved to the Okanagan to be with his mom. Literally, I've spent hundreds of nights in the hospital, infusions, transfusions, very scary and very lonely. But God supernaturally was with me. I can't even describe it. I remember one time my bowel collapsed and I don't drive at night, and I certainly don't drive in the rain at night. And I was in West Kelowna and my ostomy had plugged, and I knew I was in trouble, and I thought, I don't want to go to the hospital one more time. And I got in the car and I drove in the dark in the rain, and I'm like, seriously, Lord, is this really necessary? I got to the hospital, I got out of the car, I walked through the door and emerged, and I went, no way. I am not spending one more minute in the hospital. And I turned around and I went back in my car. Nothing had changed. I was just ticked off, and I was not going to go into the hospital for one more minute. I drove home, and because I waited, of course, the consequence was higher, and I ended up having emergency surgery. I don't know if it was the next day or the next day after that. And the surgeon said to me, now you can't leave the hospital. Now you have to stay. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, until you can get on what's called home TPN, is where I give that IV myself. you have to stay here until there's a spot for you. And there's only 12 spots in all of BC, and they're all taken. So you have to wait till someone dies, and then you can have the medicine that you need. So I'm trying to call on the Lord and ask him, what is the deal? And in the meanwhile, I phoned my mom again because the doctors are like, you really have to find out if there's any medical history because we're worried for your kids. So I get this paper from my mom, and on it was my birth record. Now, she's had it all these years. And I was like, are you kidding? And on it, it says I was 2 pounds 6 ounces. On it, it says it was trauma at birth, that I had to have surgery at birth, that my lungs were screwed up, blah, blah, blah. But it said my name. And my name was Lonnie Ray Groves. And when I read that name, I went, there you are. And I knew that's who I was supposed to be, was Lonnie Ray. A week later, Gord White and his wife were speaking in Kelowna, and we had come out where we were missionaries at the time, and his wife read this scripture, and I couldn't believe how much it tugged at my heart. It said, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My rock, God is my rock, in whom I will take refuge. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation and my stronghold. And I'll call to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. And then when she read this, I doubled over and I was in a pile on the floor. I don't even know this lady. It was very embarrassing. The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. And the snares of death confronted me. And in my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. And from his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came down and he heard me. The earth trembled and quaked. And the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and he came down. In the dark clouds, and they were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew, and he soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering and his canopy around him. The dark rain clouds the sky. And out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced, and the Lord thundered from heaven. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemies, great bolts of lightning, and routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth were laid bare. That was the Lord's rebuke, and at the blast of his nostrils, he came down. And he reached down from on high, and he took hold of me, and he drew me out of the deep waters, and he rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. When I talked to my mom after that, she told me, I will tell you what the trauma at birth was. Your mom aborted you when you were about 20 weeks old. And because I survived the abortion, they had to. If you take a breath, they have to resuscitate you and do all the things. So most of the parts of my body weren't even made right or finished baking, as I say. And that's part of the reason why I have such health stuff now. It was really interesting when my mom told me that. And then when Gord White's wife read that, the Lord drew me out into a spacious place. And he rescued me because he delighted in me. I have no idea why, but since before the world began, he delighted in me. I knew at that moment that the Lord Elohim was the Most High and that he delighted in me. So I am Lonnie Ray. I'm happy to tell you that. And after my mom died, I wanted to change my name to that. But because of all my stuff for work credentials, it would be a pain in the butt to do it. So that's my name, Lonnie Ray Groves. If you see me on the street, you can call me anything. I just knew that when I heard my name, it was important. The Lord has shown me over the years about his character and his names. Now I know the Lord Elroy and Elohim. As a counselor, I've watched how people stuff their traumas like they never existed, and without warning, there can be flashbacks. And where can the healing begin? With the recognition of Elroy, the God who sees. He's awake, he sees it all. He knows the sin and sins that were committed against us, and someday he will vindicate us. So which part of God do you need today? Do you need the shepherd? Do you need the healer? Do you need the deliverer? Or perhaps Jehovah Shalom and peace? Either way, it's all for you. I just invite you today to get to know a little more about God. Every need you ever have will be met by a greater knowledge of who he is. Now I just have one more song for you. Even though there's been trouble in my life, even though there's been heartache once or twice, even though you've seen pain in my eyes, I'm choosing to rewrite the story. To you, Lord, I'll give you glory, 'cause even though the storm's been way too big for me, and even though I've wandered from your path, I see, even though I couldn't see the forest through the trees, even though, to you alone, oh Lord, I give back my life, 'cause you have given your life for me. Who am I to question things that you do? Who am I to say anything? Who am I? Who am I? Even though there's been trouble in my life, even though there's been heartache once or twice, even though you've seen pain in my eyes, I'm choosing to rewrite the story. To you, Lord, I'll give you glory, 'cause even though the storm's been way too big for me, and even though I've wandered from your path, I see, even though I couldn't see the forest through the trees, even though, to you alone, oh Lord, I give back my life, 'cause you have given your life for me. Who am I to question the things that you to say anything. Who am I? Who am I? For you alone, for you alone can change me. For you alone have changed me. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.